So now in this video, we're going to be mirroring this part of the building to the other side, and we're going to start using this original form to generate all the other elements, such as the slabs, such as the balustrades, and we can actually use it to go as far as we want based on the amount of detail that is required. So the first thing we want to do is we want to determine where this point is. Now we can do that in a few different ways. We can either snap an object onto this point and then see what that point is. In our case, I know that this building is exactly aligned to be on that center, so I can use its coordinates here. And what we're going to be doing is, if you go into your section here, you'll be able to adjust the pivot. So we want to adjust the working point. So at the moment, the working point is sitting somewhere at 0, 0, 0, I assume. And we want to get it to be sitting at this point here, which is the point of bilateral symmetry for these towers. So what we want to do is we want to select this building and we want to copy paste the X and Y values by just copying there. We edit the working point by copying that into there. And we want to do the same thing with the Y. Copy and then pressing edit working point. We want to copy it there, and you'll see that that working point now snaps into place. So when we select use working point, we can select any object that we create on one side, and we can now use the mirror tool just to, with an instance, copy it across to the other side. Now this is going to help us right through the entire project, since we only really need to make one of these buildings to have the identical copy on the other side. Now we can actually delete this and first complete everything on the one side before we copy across. I'm just going to keep it on the side so we can keep a good idea of where we are around this building as we rotate it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use this form on the left, and remember still that we have our hierarchy set in place. So we have that original taper there, so we can keep going forward and back. And we're going to use this form now to generate these slabs that are going to run up the entire height of the building, and then the slabs seem to pull out of the facade to create big balconies at this area here, and we're going to do that part now. So all we need to do is we need to select these edges, and we need to select all the edges that will have slabs to them inside the building. So we're going to select all of that, and we're going to leave this top one for later, since that is going to form part of the entire top stadium platform that we're going to build in the later part of this tutorial. So I'm just going to make sure that in red all of these levels are selected. If you just select one or two, you can click on loop and that will just loop that selection around. And once you're sure that you have all of those selected, you can then click on create shape and then just create a linear shape out of that. And already once you create that, you can create your new layer, and we can call that 03 slabs. And while we're in the layer editor, we can create balustrades. So we're going to stay on the slabs, and we're going to assign this new object to the slabs. We could be doing the exact same thing to this tower in the middle, but just to keep things running quickly, I'm only going to work on this one here. And then this one is basically just the same amount of, the same workflow will apply to this tower in the middle. So we have these slabs, and these slabs are all now individual splines. Now we can go to these splines and we can make them slightly bigger than the facade. They can become balconies in all directions. They can be slightly smaller if you want the facade to run past the slabs. So it depends on what your building style is. If you want to, for instance, contract them slightly inwards, then you would select all of the outlines and you will just use the outline command down here. And let's say you want to pull them in by 0.1 meter. So that has just pulled everything in slightly. We can delete the outer one, and now we have a slab which is slightly by 100 millimeters, which is slightly inside our main facade. And if you're working in inches and feet, then, well, forgive me and try to concentrate on the principle and not the actual numerical values, since I'm sure you know what to use in your own country. Right, so in the front elevation, we know that some of these are sticking out, so we're going to unselect the ones that are not, and we're only going to work on the slab edges that we need to pull out slightly. So we can now also go back here. We don't need the working point for this workflow right here. So we're going to go back to our spline, select those, and now we have selected just these guys here, and that's what we want to pull out. So we pull all of them out, and then a little trick here, press R just to scale everything, and then just scale, making sure that this is in the middle, and just scale everything sideways until it all lines up. You can go a few times across your screen until you believe that you've basically straightened it out. You can then pull it back until you're happy with it being at the right point, until you hit this vertical line here. So basically we now have completed the slab edges, and these can immediately be extruded down just the way we did the other slabs on the podium. We can extrude them down by 0.25. Let's say 25. And if we view that, we can actually see we've got some issues here. So we're going to fix that. So sometimes this happens. I do admit it's quite bothersome, but it can happen to the best of us. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little workaround. Instead of using extrude, we're going to do an edit poly. You can see that that also doesn't work. So you need to go through just a trial and error process to see. Sometimes when we do extrude these out, it thinks that these are all part of the same object. So we're going to do different methods here. Usually the extrude works the best, and it's the one that I use most of the time. And right, so I'm just going to figure out here how to do this correctly. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an extrude without any capping. This seems to work the best. So we still have -25 here. And what I'm going to do is just add an edit poly. And I'm going to select all of the borders that are available, which is everything. And I'm going to right click and press cap. Then we see that some of them are still pointing in the wrong direction, and that is the reason why we had some of these skinning the wrong way when we added the extrude modifier. So what we can do is we can select the ones that are pointing in the wrong direction, all the ones which are showing us black, and we can, by holding down Control, click on Polygon, and then just go and flip those vertices around, and flip those faces around, and we still have some more here. So let's do the same process, convert to face, and flip that around. So now we pretty much have our slabs that are ready. We can exit back, and that is our building with all of its slabs. Now you can either, if you want, as you're working, mirror everything as you're going, or you can do it all in one shot at the end. So the last thing I'm going to do in this video before we finish up is we're just going to add balconies, or balustrades rather, to these balconies. And to do that, we want to go down to this level, and we want to select the slabs that will have balconies. Let's say we'll start right from this one that has a tiny little notch sticking out. And we're going to select these. We can actually, just to make things simpler, you can copy the entire object. So we make a copy, press OK, and then do that process again by going down to your splines. And then just by going Control-I, you select the inverse, you press delete on the keyboard, and then now you're left with the copy of the splines just of the levels that have those balconies. So what we want to do now is we want to go into that object. You can select all of these lines here. We can actually do this if you like, and we can delete these segments at the back, and holding down these vertices, we just slide that across. Now we can look in the front view. Now again, this is one of those things that you can do several different ways. We could have either just right-clicked and refined, but then we would have had to do it twice. So this way I'm just going to do it manually, and I'm going to just pull these in slightly. As long as it is just roughly around the facade, it's going to be good enough, since most of our views of this building will be from quite far away. So once we get this part done, I'm just going to very quickly shoot through these last few dots, last few vertices. And there we have it. Right, so now we have those splines. All we have to do to these splines is delete this edit poly. Instead of extruding down, we're going to extrude up by 1 meter. And if you press F3, you will notice that we now have all of our balustrades in place. Now later we're going to turn these into either glass or add a texture to it, so we can play around with that. We'll need to flip the polys as well, flip the faces at least to the other side, but we can do that in a later video. For now, what we've covered in this one is creating all of the slabs and using the slab splines just to generate those balustrades around the outside.